Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Bodak, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
It all began one perfectly lovely day in the Big Harbor. Oh dear, George was saying inside. What am I going to do? Theodore knew what he wanted to do that day. George, can we practice steering backwards together? He asked politely. Well, much to Theodore's surprise, George didn't say a word. Theodore gave the best blast he could from his whistle. What? Oh, Theodore. Oh, sorry to surprise you, George. I was saying, can we practice steering backwards together? Not now, Theodore. I have more important things on my mind. Well, okay, George. Maybe tomorrow will be a better day. Tomorrow? Roared George. Now he seemed really bothered. Tomorrow? Don't even talk to me about tomorrow.
Okay, Georgie. What's got you fired up that you're so worried about tomorrow?
Yeah, George, I'm pretty sure it can't be that bad.
Well, we're about to find that out. So anyway, after George takes off leaving Theodore very puzzled, he decides to go and ask Bodak what's happening tomorrow.
Well, said Bodak, nothing special. I'm sure tomorrow the sun will come up and the tide will go out. And oh yes, tomorrow George has his hull checkup. Thought Theodore. Just another day in the harbor, said Bodak. Now every year tugboats go to get their hulls checked. The hull of a tugboat is the part that's under the water, and it gets full of rust. Little holes also need to be filled in, so one day you don't get a leak. Tomorrow, George is getting his hull checkup, thought Theodore. I wonder...
Could this possibly be why George has been acting so strangely?
Possibly. So after hearing all this, Theodore sets off looking for George when he finds the big tug at the old scrap dock. Okay, why would George have any reason to be here? See if you can guess what'll happen next.
George smiled to himself. I knew I could fit in here. Uh-oh, George wiggled and jiggled. He was stuck. Oh no, I'll never get out of here. Help! Cried George. Wait a minute. No one even knows I'm here. Poor George almost felt like crying, which he never, ever does. I'll just turn into a big pile of rust, he moaned. Like this old barge.
Yeah, you didn't think that all the way through, did you, Georgie boy?
Well, you gotta remember, we all do pretty strange things when we're scared. I can kinda cut George a little slack. But anyways, thinking this might be the end for him, who shows up but good old Theodore to help pull him out? And with curiosity still on his mind, Theodore asks George why he was hiding.
Does it have anything to do with tomorrow? Yes, it does, said George gruffly. Theodore, can you keep a secret? Of course I can, replied Theodore. Tomorrow I have to have my hull checkup, George whispered. Oh, I know that, said Theodore. So, repeated George. So, when you have your hull checkup, they scrape you and they fill any holes in your sides and it hurts. Poor George was very upset. I don't have any rust or holes, he went on. I'm shipshape, and I don't want to be out of the water. I'm not a bird. I'm a big, strong tugboat. George the Valiant.
So all of this is because you don't want to go to your checkup? I could say a lot of things here, but let's be honest. Most of us have pretty much acted like George sometime. So now that Theodore knows why George is so upset, he then explains his plan to Theodore on how he's going to avoid his checkup.
Tomorrow, I'm going to hide behind this barge, and I won't go to my checkup, and no one will be able to find me. Then he turned to Theodore with his most serious look. "And you can't tell anyone about my plan. It's a secret. You promised no true blue friend ever tells a secret." Now, Theodore had promised to keep George's secret, and he wanted to be a true blue friend. But he didn't like this plan of George's, not one bit.
I'm not so sure that's a good idea. I certainly wouldn't put my friends in a situation like this.
Neither would I. But continuing on, the next day, Theodore, Emily, and Foduck are assigned to move a rusty wreck to Old Dock number 9 so it can be scrunched.
But unfortunately, that's the dock that George is hiding behind.
But, stammered Theodore, "that dock is already full. The dispatcher wants us to jam this old rusty wreck in, too," called Emily. Foduck noticed that Theodore looked very worried. "Oh, it's only scrap, Theodore," said Foduck. "It doesn't matter if it gets all scrunched up." Well, Theodore felt dizzy. It was George who was going to get scrunched. What should he do?
If I was in this situation, I'd say screw it and just tell. Why would you ever want to be in a position like that? Oh, and by the way, did anybody notice that rusty wreck is the same from the Dark and Scary Cove? Just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyways, when the tugs arrive at the dock, Theodore has no idea what to do. Do his job or protect his friend? I mean, he's a smart little tugboat. Let's see what he does.
Foduck and Emily were pushing away with all their might. The old rusty wreck began to make a terrible grinding sound. It was scrunched together with the barge. Tighter and tighter. "Stop!" yelled Theodore. "George is hiding behind the scrap barge. He'll be squished." There, he had said it. Emily and Foduck stopped pushing right away, very surprised. Then everyone heard a small voice from the back of Old Dock number 9. "I guess I better come out now." Then everyone saw a very sorry and very nearly scrunched George come up from behind the barges. Finally, Theodore spoke up. "I'm sorry for telling your secret, George." "That's okay, Theodore. I was about to get scrunched. You did the right thing. I was starting to feel pretty squeezed."
You made the right choice, Theodore.
Yeah, he did. But now, the secrets are out. Time to confess, Georgie.
"I was hiding so I wouldn't have to have my hull checkup." Foduck and Emily still looked puzzled. George gathered his courage and went on. I'm afraid to go," he said quietly. It was funny, thought George. He suddenly felt better, now that he had told his friends his big secret.
So now that the truth is out in the open, George then heads off by himself and the tugs are wondering what he'll do next. So after work, they all head over to the marine yards just to see if George had gone for his hull checkup.
As they floated towards the dock, they all heard a sound from behind a ship. Terrible sound, like someone crying. Oh! It sounded just like George. The tugboats moved closer to see what was happening. Oh! Ow! Ow! Ooh! Ow! George had made his choice. And do you know what? Much to his surprise, the scraping and the filling hadn't hurt at all. In fact, it tickled. Look at me. This is fun. Then George saw the other tugboats staring at him in amazement. "Yes, well," he said, clearing his throat. "We tugboats have to be ship-shape, right?" Then the tugs began to laugh and toot together. And do you know who had the biggest, widest smile of them all? George the Valiant.
And that concludes True Blue Friends. Alright, David, what are your thoughts on this episode?
This was a very good episode in my opinion. I really did like George's characterization. In fact, he kind of reminds me of James. His vain nature makes him, let's just say, too proud to try other things. And that kind of resembles James in a way that I don't think any other character could do. Theodore's characterization was also really good. Although I don't really like the fact that he kept the secret. I would have just told the dispatcher right away. But overall, I can understand this episode, and it's super relatable to me.
This episode was actually pretty good. It's nice to see George in the spotlight now. And who would have thought his character would be so relatable? Seeing how terrified George was over a simple little checkup, that's kind of how a young child would act if they were going to the doctors. Loads of us have probably reacted this way. And for a story as great as this to cover a topic that can relate to a whole lot of people, I think this was handled brilliantly. Apart from George, I definitely think Theodore can also relate to maybe a small portion of us too. Depending on the situation, I'm sure some of us maybe might have been in his position. Maybe. Having a friend make you keep a quote-unquote dangerous secret like that can make you feel very uncomfortable, as Theodore pretty much demonstrated. The music was the same as always. Short familiar ditties here and there. Nothing really too big to brag about. Other than that, I definitely have to say, to those who haven't seen this episode in full, I highly recommend checking it out. It will not disappoint you, I promise. This is such a really, really good episode. Up next is Bumper Buddies.